Listen to the All in My Head podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please, allow me to show you something.
Welcome back to the All in My Head podcast. I'm Jenny, and I am your host. And you have landed here for season 2, episode 20. And this episode today is called The Lies We Tell Ourselves, Unpacking Imposter Syndrome. And this theme came up in my last episode with author and writer Ryan Doobie, and again in a writers group just a few weeks ago, where we sat and we grounded and we just kind of sat with the theme of feeling imposter syndrome. And then we journaled about the subject. And since it has come up many times, it has come up in many different settings and with many different groups of people. So I knew that this needed to be the subject for this episode. I'm all about signs. So if something's coming up and there is a theme that is ever present, I know we need to talk about it more. So, that being said, let me ask you something. Have you ever achieved something, whether it was a creative project that you finished, or a promotion you received, or just someone complimenting you on your work? And instead of feeling proud and owning it, your inner voice, and I'm putting that in air quotes, whispers something to the effect of, don't get too comfortable. They're going to figure out you're a fraud. Or you downplay that project or accolade altogether, even though you worked so hard on it. And if that hits home to you, you're not alone. Today, I want to kind of take a deep dive into the layers of imposter syndrome, what it is, why we experience it, and how we start telling ourselves a different story. So let's start off with a quick definition. I love a definition, love a dictionary, but let's start off with this definition of what imposter syndrome is. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their skills, their talents, or accomplishments, and have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. This phrase was first coined in the 1970s, so that's my era. I'm a 73 baby, by two psychologists that are named Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. And they studied high-achieving women that, despite having already achieved great success, were still feeling undeserving of the accolades or the titles. And here's the kicker. I mean, I think we all know, imposter syndrome doesn't just affect women. It affects everyone across genders, professions, backgrounds. We're all affected by imposter syndrome. And it kind of can show up like, for example, it's the writer who gets published and says, that was just luck. I was in the right place at the right time, or I just happened to meet the right person or people. Or even, I'm not really a writer yet. I've heard that recently. And we talked about that in great depth on the last podcast episode, Paper Planes, Pen Pals, and also in this writing group. It can also show up, for example, we're in teachers, right? We see this a lot, who doubt that they're making a difference, or an entrepreneur who thinks, any minute now, someone is going to notice that I do not know what I'm doing. But you know what? Imposter syndrome is a liar. It lies to us. And it tells us that we don't belong. So where do those lies come from? Who or what has been feeding these lies to us? Well, first off, it would be the need for perfectionism. That is a big one. Many people have been taught since a very young age that they must always get it right, that anything less than 100% feels like a failure. And this sets us up to believe that unless we know everything, we're not enough. And who knows everything? I mean, there are people who know a lot, but who knows everything? And what about the comparison culture? Social media, as wonderful as it can be for getting a message out and showcasing your talents and your gifts or connecting with people, it's made it too easy to compare our behind the scenes to someone else's story or their highlight reel. We're only seeing these people's wins and their happiness and their highest achievements. We're not seeing their self-doubt. And that's not to say that there aren't people who do talk about these things on social media, but the overall arching theme is living my best life. That's what we're going to show. And then there is the family and culture expectations. And maybe you grew up in a household where success was expected, but it was never celebrated. Or maybe you're the first in your family to achieve certain things and feel the pressure to represent your family or your culture perfectly. Or, and this is most relatable to me, and I've talked about it many times in the podcast, and I've written about it, and I am writing about it more in depth in this poetry book that I'm working on that should be out very soon. You have been told that you aren't talented and you will never achieve success and that you're not good enough. How would imposter syndrome not seep into the spaces where doubt has lived so prevalently for so long? Impossible. It's impossible that imposter syndrome wouldn't seep into those spaces and grow a bigger sense of imposter syndrome. And lastly, and this is a big one in our society that I've talked about it as well, celebrates the busyness and being the most successful in your workplace or in your career. So the workplace pressures and the tokenism, right? This is another big one. And it's a big one because we're kind of seeing it dismantled in a very visible and real way. But also just being the only one in the room, whether you're the only woman or the only person of color or the only non-traditional thinker, that can heighten these feelings of not belonging. And what I know personally is that imposter syndrome thrives in silence. It festers and it grows in the shadows where we don't name it or challenge these internalized beliefs. I've talked about it in depth about how I kept quiet about things in my life. I internalized most everything and I let it fester and I let it grow and I let it really define me in a very real way for a very long time. And it was not healthy and it was not good for me. But I finally came to a point where I was able to look at those things. And that's again through therapy and journaling and having the right people around me who lifted me up and who helped me walk through the deep and dark parts of my life. But I've also talked in depth about this season for me in particular as the undoing and the unlearning. I remember talking with Reggie Hubbard in a few episodes past and how we talked about this unlearning and undoing of, for me, words, criticism, what I was told was normal, and the invalidation that was placed on me at a very young age. So I personally have looked imposter syndrome in the face. And by speaking out on these subjects with this podcast and in my writing, I feel like I have started to come to that point where I can validate who I am, what I am. I'm a writer. I'm a podcaster. I'm a storyteller. I'm an artist. I'm a creative. I can call myself those things and know that it's real and that it's true, that the life that I am living and the life that I am creating for myself is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that is not to say that doubt doesn't seep in sometimes and that voice doesn't creep in, but I look at it for what it is. I look at it for the outer voice that is trying to seep back in. That's not my voice. That's someone else's voice. That's societal. That is society trying to downplay our gifts and our talents. And I know that I'm not the only one who has had this heaviness thrust upon them. So we need to talk about it. And we need to shine a light into the darkness and bring these things to light and talk about imposter syndrome for what it is, for the liar that it is. And I want to kind of share my own personal story. And I've shared it a little bit with this podcast and in this podcast. But when I first started this podcast, all in my head, as I have said, is very much how I lived my life. I overthought things. I scrutinized everything. I kind of made myself sick over overthinking and picking apart all the details and wondering if I was worthy of these things. And I say I had this moment, but really it was years of overthinking. I thought, who am I to host a podcast? Will anyone even care what I have to say? I'm not a therapist. I'm not a celebrity. I'm just Jenny. But what I have realized over time and in meeting people and in talking with people who have listened to the podcast and even in conversations with my inner circle, my close friends, my children, my family who support and love me, is that I didn't need any credentials. And again, that's in air quotes. I didn't need any credentials to be human. I am a human living a human experience, and I just needed the courage to be honest. Honest about my experience, honest about what I have lived and lived through, and know and be confident that my thoughts and feelings are valid. They're valid because I experienced them and I own them. And that's why I created this space. Not because I've got it all figured out in any way, because I don't. I don't know who does. I would love to meet you if you do. Because life is a lot. The human experience is a lot. So I don't have it all figured out, but I'm a work in progress. I'm forever learning. I'm forever growing. I'm forever healing. And you probably understand that if you're listening to my podcast and if you've been around for a while. We probably have some things in common. And that's why I created this space. I want people to remember that this is a safe space always. This is a safe space to feel, and this is a safe space to heal. And I guess that's why this theme has been so prevalent in my life lately. It's something that I have gone through in depth, and I feel like I'm meeting more people and being connected with more people who are kind of in this stage right now. And that, everything I feel and I believe happens for a reason. Things come into your life in seasons and for reasons, but I don't feel like there are any coincidences in life. I feel and believe that you meet people where you are and that we're all here to kind of help each other on this journey, because I know I have had so many wonderful people in my life that have helped me along this journey. So I really do feel like this subject has been coming up again and again and again because it needed to be talked about in a bigger realm and in a more visible way. So how do we start dismantling imposter syndrome? Because that's a hard one. It's a big monster, imposter syndrome. I would call it a monster. I mean, it's a big, heavy thing to carry. So how do we start dismantling it? I think these are the things that have helped me. And hopefully they help you too, if you're dealing with this. First off, we're going to name it. We're going to name imposter syndrome. The moment that you feel that I'm not good enough voice, pause, take a beat, and call it out and call it what it is. That's imposter syndrome talking. That is not my voice. I personally have spoken about how my voice, my inner voice, again in quotes, was actually a person in my life who invalidated me and made me feel small and unworthy. So I call that out and give back ownership to them. It's not mine. It's not my voice. It's not mine to carry. I don't want it. I don't need it. And more importantly, I don't believe it. So I give it back to them and I let it go. Giving it a name takes its power away. And this is another good one. Keep a folder, or some people do this digitally. And by folder, I mean anything that you can kind of place these into. I personally have a jar and it's on my desk and it's called the Little Jar of Joy and Inspiration. And again, some people do this digitally. Some people have physical folders or a journal. I have this jar on my desk and save kind words in it, feedback, personal wins, whether it's big or it's small. And when doubt creeps in, read through it. In this jar, I have quotes from calendars or magazines. I have words of inspiration. I have fortunes from fortune cookies that inspire and are uplifting to me. And I just pull from that jar when I need a word of inspiration or motivation or guidance to get out of my head. So utilize that as another tool to help yourself cope and defeat. We're going to call it defeating imposter syndrome, and talk about it. I mean, that's a big one. I think we as a society hold on to these things and we don't talk about them and we don't take time to talk about our feelings. I talked about that in, it's okay to not be okay. I think we need to talk about anything and everything and share those feelings with friends, with mentors, a therapist, or in a community that you feel safe in. I have some great groups of people and community that I feel safe in, and we are able to talk about these things. And you will be so surprised how many people will say to you, wait, me too. I have felt that. I understand that. And I can relate. You think you're alone in it, but you'd be thoroughly surprised as to how many people are going through what you're going through or have felt the way that you have felt. So talk to people and redefine success. This was a big one for me with my therapist saying, you're the one putting these limitations on yourself now. You're the one putting these deadlines on. Redefine what success is. Perfection isn't the goal. I'm going to say that again. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. So as long as we're progressing, isn't that a win? We don't have to be the expert in the room. We just have to show up. And practice self-compassion. You're allowed to give yourself grace. You're allowed to just be learning and growing and healing. And yes, you are allowed to succeed. You're allowed to succeed because you deserve it all. I deserve it all. We deserve it all. You deserve success. You deserve happiness. You deserve abundance. And you deserve to live the life you want every day in whatever way makes you happy. You deserve to be anything and everything that you have ever dreamed of. And you get to call yourself by that name. If you're a writer, say I'm a writer. If you're a podcaster, say I'm a podcaster. If you're a mom and you're killing it, say I'm a mom and I'm killing it. If you're a doctor, I'm a doctor and I'm great at it. If you are anything and everyone is something, just own it. Own it and say, I am this. And don't give excuses as to why you got there or how you got there or that it came by accident. You earned it. You deserve it. You are. And here's what I want to make kind of this closing reflection and what I want you to walk away with today. You are not a fraud. You are not alone. And that voice in your head that says you're not good enough is just fear wearing a mask. It's just fear. And let's stop feeding fear. Because the more you feed it, the bigger it grows. So stop feeding fear. Let's stop believing the lies that we tell ourselves and start speaking truth, even if our voices shake. Let's all take a collective. Let's all take a collective deep breath in and a big sigh out. Let go of that fear. Let go of all that holds you back. And take this very moment to remind yourself that you belong here exactly as you are. If this story resonated with you, and like I said, it's been a big theme in my life lately, and it has really come up in most rooms that I've been in, I'd love to hear your story. You can message me in fan mail. You can also direct message me on Instagram at allinmyhead_podcast. And let's keep this conversation going because vulnerability builds bridges. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, share it, and just support the All in My Head podcast. You can do so by subscribing, as I said. You can also do so via Buy Me a Coffee at coff.ee/All in My Head podcast, or head over to Linktree at linktr.ee/Jenny from the podcast, and you'll find ways to support me there. But also leave a review of the podcast. That's so important to do. I know the podcast that I love to do that, and it helps the show grow and it reaches the folks who might need it the most. And I lastly want to just take a moment to thank those of you who have supported me by ordering one of my journals, one of my journal babies. I have 2 up on Amazon right now. So I want to thank you for supporting me in that way and ordering a journal on Amazon. It's another way to support me as a writer and to support this podcast, and it means so very much to me. Thank you for taking time out to listen to the All in My Head podcast. Again, it means so much to know that so many people are out there listening and taking time out of their busy schedules to hear what I have to say. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have the best and most beautiful day.